London's winter season glittered with its usual expectancy, despite the sharp December cold that pressed against the city. Lady Pembroke's ball had always been the grand opening of the season, a spectacle of diamonds, rumors, and calculated smiles. Nobles flocked to her marbled ballroom like moths to flame, eager to be seen after months hidden away on their estates. Adrian Ravenswood had not meant to return to England so soon, certainly not to London. A year abroad had softened society's whispers, but not the blade of his grief or the weight of his regret. He stood at the entrance now, jaw clenched, breath unsteady, gripping a glass of untouched brandy. He was a duke who had survived war, parliament, and political rivals, yet a single sight had undone him completely. "Your Grace," murmured Lord Whitford, approaching with a sly smile, "London did not expect to see you this season." "Business," Adrian replied absently, but Whitford's grin widened. "Or perhaps unfinished business?" Adrian barely heard him, because at that moment the grand doors opened again, and she stepped into the ballroom. Lady Isabella Harcourt, clad in soft winter blue silk that shimmered beneath the chandelier's glow. Her hair, once worn in playful curls, was now swept into an elegant knot that revealed a woman transformed, composed, untouchable. But it was not her beauty that shattered him. It was the man at her side, Viscount Alden Whitcomb, a gentleman known for his pristine reputation, his controlled charm, his unwavering honor. Adrian's stomach twisted violently. A year ago, Isabella had belonged to no one but herself, yet he had dared to dream. Now, she belonged firmly in another man's world. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The orchestra swelled, violins rising like a tide, but Isabella heard none of it. Her heartbeat was louder, sharp, steady, betraying nothing of the storm gathering beneath her calm exterior. She had known the moment she stepped into the glittering ballroom that whispers would follow. She had prepared herself for that. What she had not prepared for was him. Isabella felt it before she saw him. An old ache, long buried, suddenly tearing open. Then her gaze collided with Adrian Ravenswood, the Duke of Eastmere, her past, her almost, her ruin. She inhaled slowly, the way her etiquette instructor had trained her when she was a girl. Chin up, shoulders relaxed, spine straight, emotions tucked away like fragile letters in a locked drawer. But her composure faltered for the briefest moment, because he looked different, not just older, harder. His dark hair, once neatly trimmed, now brushed the collar of his coat. His jaw was sharper, his eyes deeper, as though sleepless nights had carved shadows where warmth once lived. And the way he stood, there was a stiffness, a heaviness, as if every breath cost him something. The Viscount at her side did not notice, but Adrian did. He always did. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Regret, disbelief, longing, she couldn't tell. She refused to look long enough to decipher it. Instead, she angled her body slightly toward Viscount Alden Whitcomb, who had been nothing but kind, patient, and respectful since the day they met. "Are you quite all right, my lady?" Alden asked gently. She smiled, a soft, practiced curve of lips. "Perfectly." But Alden was observant. His gray eyes narrowed. "If anyone has unsettled you, you need only—" "No," she interrupted quickly. "No one has that power anymore." The lie tasted too familiar. Across the ballroom, Adrian still hadn't moved. His hand tightened around his untouched brandy. His chest rose barely, as if he was inhaling the sight of her, trying to believe she was truly real. Alive, standing there in blue silk with another man's arm beneath her hand. A flicker of pain crossed his face. Swift, raw, almost human. Isabella looked away before those memories could swallow her. She had survived a year rebuilding herself piece by piece. She would not crumble now, not in front of him, not in front of the 100 watching eyes waiting for a scandal to unfold. "Shall we join the dance?" Alden offered, ever gracious. Isabella hesitated. Dancing meant stepping into the center of the room, where Adrian could not help but watch her, where old wounds would be reopened beneath crystalline chandeliers, but refusing would spark whispers. She nodded. Alden led her toward the dance floor as the orchestra shifted into a lilting holiday waltz. Conversations hushed, gowns rustled, and the crowd parted like a sea of silk and curiosity. As Alden guided her into motion, Isabella forced her breaths to match the rhythm. Step, glide, turn, elegant, controlled. Untouched by the past. But the moment Alden spun her gracefully, her eyes passed over Adrian once more. He was no longer standing where she left him. He was moving, toward the dance floor, toward her. A ripple moved through the crowd. Someone whispered. A lady gasped softly, and Isabella's heart, once steady, began to race with a panic she hid behind her serene expression. Alden felt her stiffen. Isabella, she didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because Adrian Ravenswood, the man who had once begged her for time he never gave, the man who had drowned her in promises he never kept, was now walking straight into the light, his gaze locked solely on her. He was coming for her, and nothing, not a year apart, not a new suitor, not her carefully rebuilt strength, was enough to stop the past from colliding with her present. Not anymore. The music swirled, bright and careless, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the chandeliers. Isabella moved through the waltz on instinct, each step perfectly measured. But her thoughts were anything but calm. Adrian was getting closer, not with urgency, not with arrogance, but with the unmistakable determination of a man who had already made a decision. Alden turned her again, and this time she caught a full glimpse of Adrian weaving through the dancers. The crowd parted without being asked, whispers floating around him like falling snow. The Duke of Eastmere. Has he returned for her? I thought she was lost. Why is he looking at Lady Isabella like that? She forced her eyes forward, spine straightening, refusing to let the ballroom see the fear twisting inside her. Yet her fingers curled slightly against Alden's shoulder. Alden noticed. Isabella, he murmured low enough for only her to hear. If you need to leave. No, she whispered. But Alden's gaze flicked over her head and hardened instantly. Adrian had stopped only 3 paces away. Isabella felt it first, a shift in the air, a tightening of the room, the unmistakable pull of a presence she had once known too well. Alden's arm stiffened beneath her hand. As the waltz slowed into its final turn, he released her just enough to step slightly forward, shielding her without making a scene. Your Grace, Alden said coolly, London did not expect you. Adrian's eyes never left Isabella, not for a second. Viscount Whitcomb, Adrian replied, voice steady but laced with something darker. I had no intention of returning tonight. Alden raised a brow. And yet here you stand. Adrian finally tore his gaze away from Isabella, long enough to acknowledge the man beside her. Indeed. Silence fell between the 3 of them, a tense, brittle silence that stretched thinner with each heartbeat. Then Adrian spoke again, softly, but with a weight that stole Isabella's breath. Lady Isabella. Her name, spoken in his voice, unlocked 100 memories she had spent a year burying. She felt the ballroom tilt, only slightly before she forced herself to meet his gaze with cold composure. Your Grace, she replied, her voice smooth and mercilessly distant. A muscle in Adrian's cheek tightened. He took a slow breath, as though steadying himself. I had heard you were gone. His eyes flickered with pain. I feared the worst. Isabella didn't blink. I am very much alive. Alden glanced between them, his jaw tensing. Is there a particular reason the Duke feels compelled to approach my companion so urgently? Adrian looked at Alden, really looked at him, assessing, measuring. A flicker of jealousy, sharp, unmistakable, darkened his expression. It seems, Adrian said carefully, that time has changed more than I expected. Isabella's breath caught, but she hid it beneath her flawless posture. She refused to let him see anything. Alden placed a steadying hand at the small of her back, gentle, reassuring, possessive in a way Adrian could not mistake. Isabella owes you nothing, Alden said quietly. Not anymore. Adrian's gaze snapped to Isabella again. Is that true? Her heart lurched painfully. He had no right to ask, no right to demand anything now. But the entire ballroom was watching, and she knew one truth. If she wavered, if she hesitated even for a second, gossip would poison her life again. So Isabella lifted her chin and said the words she had prepared a year to finally speak. Yes, Your Grace. Whatever existed between us ended the day you left. The words struck Adrian like a blow. His breath faltered. His eyes darkened with something old and unhealed. But he didn't step back. He stepped closer. Close enough that the candlelight caught the pain in his eyes. Close enough that Isabella felt the familiar warmth of him. Dangerous, unwanted, brush against the edges of her resolve. Then allow me, Adrian said quietly, to explain why I left. Her breath froze. Alden stiffened. She owes you no audience. You are correct, Adrian said, voice lowering, eyes locked only on her. She owes me nothing, but I owe her everything. Isabella's heartbeat stumbled. No, not here, not now, not in front of half of London. She forced steel into her spine and spoke with a calmness she didn't feel. I do not wish to hear it. Adrian's expression shattered, just for a second, just long enough for her to see the truth. He had returned for her, and he had not expected another man to be standing at her side. The music began again, lively and bright, but nothing in that ballroom felt festive anymore. Isabella felt the weight of the ballroom pressing against her. Warm bodies, glittering jewels, hungry eyes waiting for the slightest misstep. She had survived a scandal once. She would not endure it again. Alden, she said softly, her voice steady despite the trembling beneath it. Will you excuse me for a moment? Alden's eyes flashed with concern. Isabella, please. He hesitated, jaw clenched, then gave a single nod. I will remain close. Adrian watched the exchange with a flicker of something fierce, something possessive, before quickly masking it. Isabella refused to acknowledge it. She stepped away from Alden and the dance floor, weaving toward a quieter corridor beside the ballroom's towering windows. Adrian followed. He didn't rush. He didn't touch her, but his steps echoed just a breath behind hers. Steady, determined, inevitable. When they reached the secluded alcove overlooking the snowy gardens, Isabella stopped, turned sharply and faced him. Her voice was cold as winter glass. Say what you came to say, Your Grace. Quickly. Adrian halted a few feet from her, as though afraid to cross an invisible line. He looked different here, away from the glitter of the ballroom. Less like a duke, more like a man who had carried his remorse across continents. I did not expect you to welcome me, he began. I'm not welcoming you, he swallowed. No, I can see that. A tense silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the distant music and the muffled laughter of oblivious guests. Isabella crossed her arms, hugging herself against the rising storm inside. You said you owed me an explanation. Then speak. Adrian looked down, exhaling a breath that trembled at the edges. When he lifted his eyes again, the pain in them was unmistakable. I left because I thought I was protecting you. She scoffed lightly, too softly, too bitterly. Is that truly the story you've chosen to cling to? It is the truth, he said, voice tightening. The truth is, I was too much of a coward to face until now. Her jaw clenched. You vanished, Adrian. No message, no letter, nothing. You made me believe. Her voice faltered. She forced it steady. You made me believe I wasn't worth the smallest explanation. Adrian flinched. I know, he said softly. Do you? Her voice shook, but she kept her chin high. Do you know what it was like hearing that your ship had returned without you? That you had left England entirely? That you had... She stopped. Breathing hurts. Adrian stepped forward, but she lifted a hand, a warning. He froze. I didn't leave because I wanted to, he said quietly. I left because I had no choice. There is always a choice, not when the life of someone you love is at risk. Her breath caught. Love. He had never said the word before. Not once. Do not use that word with me, she whispered. It is the only word that fits. His voice trembled with something unrestrained. I left because there were threats against you, against your family. I believed if I disappeared from your life, the danger would follow me and spare you. Isabella stared at him, stunned, but not softened. You believed disappearing would protect me, she repeated slowly. And instead of telling me, warning me, you decided for me? Again? Adrian closed his eyes. I know I failed you. You broke me, she said, and her voice cracked open like a wound. You took everything fragile inside me and left without even the decency of goodbye. I never meant, you never meant it, she snapped, stepping back from him. Those are words for mistakes, Adrian, not choices, and you chose to abandon me. His face paled as though she had struck him. I thought you were safer. You thought you knew better, she cut in, just like every man who decides a woman's life without her consent. The truth hung between them, sharp as crystal. For a long moment, Adrian didn't speak. His chest rose and fell slowly, painfully. I came back, he said finally, voice ragged, because I learned too late that the danger had passed, and I needed... He broke off, swallowing hard. I needed to find you, to make it right. Isabella shook her head, tears threatening but unspilled. There is no making it right. His voice dropped to a whisper. Then I will at least speak what I should have spoken long before. He looked at her fully, nothing shielded. I never stopped loving you, Isabella. Her breath faltered, her heart lurched, but her voice, when it came, was ice. That is unfortunate, she said, turning away, because I stopped waiting for you. Behind her, Adrian inhaled sharply, a sound of disbelief, a sound of pain. Isabella, do not follow me again, she whispered, stepping back toward the light and noise of the ballroom. I have rebuilt my life once. I will not let you shatter it twice. She walked away before he could answer, before she could break. And Adrian Ravenswood, Duke of Eastmere, remained alone in the shadowed alcove, with nothing but the truth he had spoken too late. Isabella returned to the ballroom with her breathing steady but her heart in chaos, an entire storm neatly concealed behind a practiced smile. Lights glittered, music soared, people laughed. No one noticed the tremor in her hands, except Alden. He intercepted her the moment she re-entered, his expression tight with concern. Isabella, he murmured, gently guiding her away from curious eyes. What did he say? She forced a fragile smile. Nothing that changes anything. Alden's jaw flexed, but he didn't press her. He simply offered his arm again. Steady, dependable, familiar. She accepted it, not because she needed support, but because she needed something solid to hold on to. But across the ballroom, Adrian's gaze found her, hungry, anguished, unmasked. The 3-second stare felt like an eternity of unsaid words. Isabella turned away sharply. She would not be pulled back into his orbit. Not now. Not again. But fate had a cruel sense of humor. Lady Beatrice Harrington, sharp-tongued, sharp-eyed, and always delighted to ignite scandal, glided toward them with a smile that never reached her eyes. My dear Isabella, she purred, what a surprising evening. I had no idea you and the Duke were still acquainted. Alden stiffened. Isabella matched Beatrice's poisonously sweet tone. Acquainted is a strong word. Beatrice's gaze flicked between Isabella and Adrian like she had discovered a secret worth selling. Oh, come now, she smirked. He stared at you the entire dance, and then the two of you slipped away moments later. She let the implication drip like venom. People will talk, you know. Isabella's pulse kicked. The last thing she needed was gossip, especially with Adrian involved. Alden stepped forward, voice controlled but cold. Lady Harrington, perhaps you should concern yourself with your own affairs. Beatrice raised a brow. Oh, but other people's affairs are far more interesting. Before Isabella could speak, Adrian appeared, silent, tall, and unmistakably furious. "Lady Harrington," he said, voice smooth with a threat beneath it, "find entertainment elsewhere." Beatrice paled at the tone. Everyone in England knew the Duke's temper was not to be tested, and glided away with feigned dignity. But Adrian didn't look at her. He looked at Isabella, and Isabella felt the world shrink again to just the two of them. "I apologize," Adrian said softly when Beatrice was gone. "I did not mean to worsen your evening." "You didn't," Isabella replied, arms crossed. "Others do that well enough." Alden stepped slightly closer, a silent but unmistakable declaration of where he stood. Adrian noticed. His expression changed, subtle but sharp. "Are you and Lord Aldridge?" Adrian asked quietly. Isabella didn't hesitate. "He is a friend." Alden's posture softened, but Adrian's tightened, as if the answer contradicted something he desperately wished were true. "A friend," Adrian repeated, voice low. "Is that all?" Isabella didn't answer. Silence thickened, heavy with old longing and new anger. Alden felt the tension like a blade. "Isabella," he said politely but firmly, "perhaps some air would help. Shall we step outside?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "Isabella, stay. We need to speak further." Her breath caught. Two men, two voices, two different kinds of safety. Alden, gentle, steady, offering calm. Adrian, dangerous, magnetic, offering the truth she had once prayed for. Her voice emerged shakier than intended. "I don't want an argument between the two of you." Alden shook his head. "No arguments, just space for you." Adrian took a step toward her, not invading her, but pleading. "Please," he said softly, "I will not raise my voice. I just need you to hear one more thing." His eyes, blue and tortured, held hers. Alden felt her hesitation and saw the war inside her. He looked at Adrian with a quiet warning, then at Isabella with patience. "I'll be right here," Alden murmured. "Choose whatever gives your heart ease." Isabella didn't know what her heart wanted. Not anymore. She inhaled slowly. Then she turned, not to Alden, not to Adrian, but toward the garden doors. "I need a moment alone," she said. Alden bowed his head in respect. Adrian froze, pained, but Isabella didn't look back. She stepped outside into the snowy night, the cold biting, the air sharp, hoping it would quiet the storm raging inside her. But she was not alone for long. A shadow followed her out. Not Alden, not Adrian. Someone else. Someone she didn't see. Until a hand, gloved, rough, unfamiliar, suddenly closed around her wrist. Her breath vanished. "Do not scream," a low voice whispered behind her. She froze. The man pulled her deeper into the dark, away from the lanterns, away from safety. Her voice trembled. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been waiting for the Duke to return," the stranger hissed. "And you're going to help send him a message." A cold dread flooded her. Adrian had said there were threats. She had thought it was an excuse. But this was real. And before she could fight back, the man dragged her into the shadows. Just as inside the ballroom, Adrian suddenly turned toward the gardens with a sharp, instinctive dread. The stranger dragged Eleanor deeper into the gardens, his grip iron tight, his breath harsh in the freezing air. Snow crunched beneath their feet as a lantern light faded behind them. "Stop," she whispered, struggling. "Let me go." "Quiet," he hissed. "If you scream, the Duke dies tonight." Her blood ran cold. This wasn't about her. This wasn't even about money. This was vengeance. Her heel caught on a stone and she stumbled. He yanked her upright with brutal force. "Please," she said, voice shaking. I don't know anything about—" "Exactly," he spit. "But he cares about you. Enough that dragging you away will rip him apart." Eleanor's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. How did this man know anything about her and Julian? Unless someone had been watching. Inside the ballroom, Adrian's eyes snapped toward the open garden doors, his breath freezing. Something was wrong. It hit him like a physical blow. A sudden emptiness, a shift in the air, the primal sense that she was not where she should be. He scanned the crowd once, twice, 3 times. No Eleanor. Alden noticed his tension. "What is it?" "She stepped outside," Adrian said, already striding toward the doors, "and she should have returned by now." Alden's expression hardened instantly. "I'll come with you." They did not argue. They both ran. When the shadows of the garden, the man shoved Eleanor against the rough stone wall of the far terrace. Snow drifted down around them, silent and soft, a cruel contrast to the terror in her chest. She gasped as the cold bit through her gown. "This doesn't have to be cruel," he muttered, checking the path behind them. "I just need the Duke's attention." "You'll have it," Eleanor whispered, desperately searching for an escape. "Just let me go." A bitter laugh. "Oh no, if I let you go, he'll come tearing after me with guards and pistols. No, you stay here until he arrives." Fear clawed up her throat. He wanted Julian to come alone. This man didn't expect to survive the night. Something glinted at his belt, a short blade, wicked and sharp. Eleanor's hands trembled. "Why?" she whispered. "What has Julian ever done to you?" "What has he done?" The man's jaw clenched. "Ask him. Ask his father. Ask every man who's died because of their decisions." Eleanor's breath caught. She didn't understand, but she saw something in his eyes, a grief that had festered into hatred. This wasn't madness. This was revenge. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Tonight, he pays." "No," Eleanor whispered fiercely. "No, he won't." Her eyes darted around. A fallen branch lay half buried in the snow. If she could reach it. A sudden crunch of footsteps behind them. The stranger stiffened. Eleanor froze. A familiar voice cut through the cold. "Let her go!" Julian. He stepped into view, snow falling softly on his shoulders, his breath a plume of white. His eyes burned with a fury Eleanor had never seen before. Wild, unrestrained, deadly. "Duke Margate," the stranger spat. "Good. It saves me effort." Alden emerged seconds later, positioning himself slightly behind Julian, ready but tense. The stranger tightened his hold on Eleanor's arm, pulling her closer. She gasped. Julian went absolutely still. "You're shaking her," he said softly. "I should do worse," the man growled. "After what your family cost mine." "Whatever this is," Julian said, voice razor calm, "let her go and face me instead." "You think I don't know you'd kill me?" the man snarled. "No. I want you to hurt first." His grip shifted. That was the opening Eleanor needed. She lunged sideways, grabbing the branch and swinging it with every ounce of strength she had. It cracked against the man's wrist. He shouted in pain. His grip loosened. "Eleanor, run!" Julian roared. She stumbled back, cold searing her lungs. But the man recovered faster than she expected. He lunged. Julian moved like lightning. He slammed into the attacker, knocking him to the ground. The two men tumbled in the snow, the blade flashing dangerously. Alden rushed to Eleanor first. "Are you hurt? Speak to me." I'm fine," she gasped, clutching his sleeve. "Help Julian." Alden didn't hesitate. He ran to join the fight, but the attacker kicked out viciously, sending him sprawling. Julian pinned the man briefly, but the attacker slashed, grazing Julian's side. Julian flinched. Eleanor's scream tore through the night. "No!" The attacker twisted, trying to drive the blade deeper. But Julian caught his wrist, forced it upward, and with a brutal move, ripped the weapon free and flung it across the snow. The man stared up at him, panting. "She'll know then. She'll know what you did." Julian's jaw clenched. "She will hear it from me, not from a man who lurks in shadows." Guards finally burst onto the terrace. The attacker didn't fight this time. He simply smirked at Julian as they seized him. "Tell her," he said, breathless with hatred. "Tell her why her life was destroyed." Eleanor's heart stuttered. Julian's expression, that raw flash of guilt, terrified her more than the attack. He knew. He knew exactly what the man meant. And as the attacker was dragged away, laughing bitterly into the snow-lit night, Julian turned toward Eleanor, pale and wounded, breathing hard. "Eleanor," he whispered, "there are truths I should have told you long ago." She stepped back instinctively, and the look on Julian's face, like she had slapped him, haunted the entire garden. The rain had finally stopped by morning, leaving the castle wrapped in a damp hush, as though the world itself held its breath. Isabella moved quietly through the corridor, her shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders, replaying every moment from the night before. His arms around her, the warmth in his voice, the way the Earl had looked at her as if she were something precious. It made no sense. Men like him did not look at women like her. She was halfway down the hallway when she heard a soft thud behind her. She turned and froze. The Earl stood there, slightly breathless, his hair still damp, his shirt partially unlaced as though he'd dressed in a rush. He must have been looking for her. "Isabella," he said, too quickly, too relieved. Her pulse skipped. "My lord, is something wrong?" He stepped toward her but stopped, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I searched the entire West Wing. You weren't in your room." "I needed fresh air," she whispered. He exhaled, the tension easing from his shoulders. "I thought you left." The words hung between them. Left? Why would he fear that? Isabella swallowed. "Why would you think I'd simply disappear?" He hesitated. Then his hand brushed his forehead, a rare crack in his mask of control. "Because last night—" He stopped. His jaw clenched. He looked away. Isabella's heart pounded painfully. "Last night—" "What? My lord?" He took a step forward. Close. Too close. Close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. "Isabella, if I crossed a line, if I made you uncomfortable, tell me now. I will never make that mistake again." Her lips parted, breath trembling. "You didn't. You didn't make a mistake." His eyes snapped to hers. Raw hope. Bare. Unhidden. Then, slowly, he reached out, his fingertips hovering near her cheek, but not touching. "Isabella, I—" Footsteps echoed from around the corner. He flinched back instantly. The spell shattered. Lady Margaret swept into view, her voice cold and sweet as poisoned honey. "My lord, the Duchess requests your presence." "Immediately." The Earl straightened, the mask sliding back into place, but his eyes stayed on Isabella, like they couldn't bear to leave her. "We will continue this later," he murmured. Then he followed Margaret down the corridor. Isabella stood alone, her heart no longer hers, because she knew it now. Last night had changed him, and this morning, he had been one breath away from changing everything. The castle staff moved like startled bees all afternoon, preparing for the winter gathering the Duchess insisted must proceed despite the stormy night before. Servants rushed, candles were trimmed, garlands pinned, chandeliers polished until they gleamed like trapped stars. But Isabella felt none of the excitement. Her mind replayed the Earl's hesitant voice, the way he'd nearly said something that terrifies and thrills her all at once. By evening, the ballroom glowed gold. The elite of the county drifted in, silks whispering, jewels glittering, gossip floating like perfume. Isabella stood near the musician's corner, observing from the shadows as she always did, until her stomach tightened. Lady Margaret was watching her. Not just watching, trailing her with her gaze, calculating, triumphant. Something was wrong. Before Isabella could move, Margaret glided toward her, her smile sharp enough to cut. "My dear Isabella," she cooed, "still lurking in corners? Or waiting for your admirer?" Isabella stiffened. "I don't know what you mean, my lady." "Oh, don't be modest." Margaret leaned closer, voice low. "I saw the Earl with you this morning. Quite intimate." Her eyes glinted. "I wonder what the Duchess will think." Isabella's heart lurched. "Please don't involve her. I've done nothing improper." "Have you?" Margaret purred. "We shall see." She floated away, leaving a chill behind her. The orchestra began a new melody, soft, romantic. The Earl entered the ballroom. Instantly, the room shifted. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Even the candles seemed to lean toward him. But his eyes, they searched. They swept the room desperately. And then they found her. His expression softened. Relief, warmth, something more. Isabella's breath caught until Margaret suddenly stepped into his path and slipped her gloved hand around his arm. "My lord," she said loudly enough for half the guests to hear, "your mother asked me to escort you to the front. She wishes to make an announcement." The Earl stiffened, clearly displeased, but he nodded. "Duty, always." Isabella watched them walk away, her chest tightening. Margaret turned her head just enough to throw a victorious smile back at Isabella. That was when Isabella realized Margaret wasn't competing for the Earl's affection. She was preparing to destroy Isabella. Moments later, the Duchess took the stage, elegant and imperious. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "I have a joyous declaration to make." Isabella froze. Margaret's triumphant smirk grew. The Earl looked confused. The Duchess lifted a delicate hand. "Tonight," she proclaimed, "I formally begin discussions for my son's engagement to Lady Margaret." Gasps, applause, shock. But Isabella? Her world shattered in silence. The Earl's eyes widened, horror, disbelief, before he shoved through the crowd, breaking royal etiquette. He moved straight toward Isabella, not Margaret, not the Duchess, her. Margaret's eyes blazed. The Earl reached Isabella, breathless, desperate, and whispered, "Don't leave. Whatever you heard, it's not what I want." But Isabella felt the pieces of her soul slipping through her fingers. How could he say that, when the world had just chosen him? The ballroom seemed to shrink around Isabella as she followed the Earl, every whispered conversation, every raised eyebrow, every clink of crystal glasses fading into a hollow echo. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the storm of emotions raging inside her. Relief, longing, confusion, and a raw, aching desire she had no right to feel. They reached the far end of the terrace, where the winter wind swept in icy gusts, sending tendrils of her hair across her face. Julian, no, the Earl, turned to her, his usual ducal composure fraying at the edges. "Isabella," he breathed, his voice low, urgent, "you have to understand. All of this, it's not what I wanted." She shook her head, stepping back, her gloves clenching. "Not what you wanted? Do you know what it looks like? Standing there letting your mother parade Margaret as if you've already chosen her over me?" He flinched. I would never choose anyone over you. You have to believe me." She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But the Duchess' words, Margaret's smug victory, it all felt like a trap she might never escape. "Then explain it," she said, voice trembling. "Explain why I've been second in your life, why I've been waiting for a sign, a word, anything, while your world continued without me." He stepped closer, closing the space between them, his eyes burning with honesty, guilt, and something deeper she had never fully allowed herself to recognize. "You weren't second, Isabella." "Never second," he said. "A year ago, I stayed away because I thought I was protecting you. From scandal, from the whispers, from the lies. My silence. It was my cowardice, not my will." Her chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. "Protecting me? By leaving me to suffer alone?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "I failed you, and I've regretted it every single day. But tonight, I refuse to fail again." Isabella's knees weakened. The wind whipped around them, tugging at her gown, but she felt rooted to the spot, unable to look away. "Then fight for me," she whispered, her voice trembling with hope and disbelief. "I am," he said, his hand finally brushing hers, warm and steady. "I've spent a year running from what I felt, from what I should have said, but no more. I am here. Only you. Only ever you." A gasp from behind made them both turn. Margaret, her smile gone, replaced with pure shock, staring at the display of devotion she had not anticipated. "Your mother arranged this engagement," Margaret hissed. You can't. The Earl stepped in front of Isabella, his stance protective, unyielding. No, I will not let you manipulate my life or hers. I choose Isabella. Always, Isabella. The Duchess, standing at the edge of the terrace, watched silently, her own authority shaken by her son's bold declaration. For once, she saw the unyielding truth in his eyes. The crowd, once tense and judgmental, now fell into murmured whispers as the Earl pulled Isabella close, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling, hearts aligned. You are mine, he whispered, and I am yours. Let the world talk. Let them speculate. Tonight, it is only us. Isabella's tears finally spilled, hot and liberating, as she pressed her lips to his. The kiss a promise, a reclaiming, a triumph over a year of fear and separation. The storm of winter and society faded behind them. For the first time in a year, Isabella felt safe, seen, loved, not by whispers, not by expectations, but by the man who had always held her heart. Margaret turned away, defeated. The Duchess remained silent, contemplative. The Earl and Isabella, finally united, were unstoppable. The music from the ballroom drifted out to them, a soft, celebratory echo. Hand in hand, they returned to the crowd, not as a secret, not as a compromise, but as two souls finally aligned, ready to face whatever whispers or storms the world could throw at them. For the first time, Isabella could believe in love, not the cautious, measured kind, but the kind that demands courage, honesty, and a willingness to fight for what truly matters. Have you ever waited for someone to finally fight for you? Comment below how you think Isabella's courage helped Julian face his fears, and share if you've ever had to wait for a love that was worth it. Part 9. The Christmas Redemption. Satisfying conclusion. The winter evening had softened into a quiet night. The snow now falling in gentle, luminous flakes, blanketing the gardens of the Pembroke estate in a pristine hush. Inside, the ball had dwindled to the lingering conversations of the most loyal guests. But for Isabella and the Earl, the world had narrowed to only each other. They walked slowly through the terrace, hand in hand, the crisp air mingling with the warmth of their closeness. Julian's, the Earl's, gaze never wavered from hers. Every moment since the confrontation in the ballroom had brought clarity, a reclamation of the year they had lost. Isabella, he said softly, stopping to look down at her, his gloved hand brushing away a loose strand of hair. I promised you honesty, and tonight I intend to keep it. I cannot undo the year I spent apart from you, but I can promise the rest of my life to you. She felt a tremor of joy she had not allowed herself in months. Julian, her voice broke under the weight of all the unspoken words. Hurt, longing, love, and forgiveness. I never stopped hoping you would come back. I thought I would have to move on without you. He shook his head, cupping her face tenderly. And now you won't have to. I am here. No more silence. No more excuses. Only us. A faint smile curved her lips, the kind that reached her eyes and banished the shadows of the past. Then let us not waste another moment. They shared a kiss, soft at first, savoring the relief and rediscovery. Then deeper, passionate, as if to make up for the months of longing, the stolen glances, the almost confessions. The world outside the terrace ceased to exist, leaving only the warmth of their reunion. Meanwhile, the Duchess watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. Finally, she approached, her steps measured, but her voice surprisingly gentle. Julian, Isabella, I see now that what I feared, the scandal, the whispers, cannot diminish what is true between you two. You have shown courage, honesty, and love. That is all a mother could hope for. Julian inclined his head. Thank you, Mother, for your understanding. Isabella offered a nod, her hand still in his, and for allowing me to finally have my say. By the morning, the scandal and whispers of the season's first ball had dissolved, replaced by admiration for the Earl's boldness and Isabella's grace. London society could speculate all it wanted, But nothing would touch what had been reclaimed in the quiet of a winter night. The love that had been tested by separation, deceit, and pride, now unshakable. In the following weeks, Isabella and Julian worked together, not just in charity or social obligations, but in life. They rebuilt not only their relationship, but also trust, hope, and a future they both had feared they might never share. Every walk through Hyde Park, every candlelit dinner, every whispered word in a quiet corridor of the castle strengthened the bond they had almost lost. Margaret, realizing her schemes had failed, withdrew into polite society, never again attempting to interfere. The Duchess, witnessing her son's happiness, let go of her own rigid expectations, understanding that love sometimes needed to follow its own path, no matter the cost. And Isabella? She learned that resilience and grace could coexist with passion and vulnerability, that the heart, once broken, could heal, sometimes with a little help from the man who never stopped loving her, even from afar. On Christmas Eve, under the soft glow of the Pembroke Ballroom's chandeliers, Julian held Isabella in his arms once more. The snow fell outside in gentle swirls, the music inside weaving a perfect harmony. Guests whispered about the Duke and the lady who had captured his heart, but they only had eyes for each other. "Isabella," he murmured, resting his forehead against hers, "shall we finally start the life we were meant to have?" She smiled, the kind of smile that carries both history and hope. "Yes, Julian, together." And in that moment, the past shadows were finally banished. Love had won. Hearts had healed. And for the first time in a long year, they could step forward, unafraid, united, and free. Have you ever had to wait for someone to fight for your heart? Comment below. Would you have trusted Julian after a year of silence? Share your thoughts and experiences of love that had to overcome obstacles, and let's celebrate those who never gave up on each other. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.